Welcome, space lovers, to the American Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette, and we're so glad you're with us to stay curious on this very special, somber day in the NASA community called the Day of Remembrance, when we honor the 17 fallen heroes and some of the other space pioneers are recognized around the country in our wonderful American space program. Behind me, of course, is the legendary now Space Mirror out at Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex that has the 17 Apollo, Challenger, and Columbia astronauts and other ones on there. And let me take that call off my phone there, as we're just live, so we wear it the way it is. So thank you all for putting up with some of our little idiosyncrasies here. And that was actually Staples, Marty, let me know that the pictures for our January 26th celebration on Sunday are ready. So yes, a lot of things going on in our museum. We've been very busy with some wonderful guests from around the world. Going to talk about some Belgians who are here this week with astronaut Anna Fisher. And let me poke my smart tablet there so I can say hi to you all there. And Gary Gerald's first up there online in Georgia, and William Whiting. Uh, Saw him out to Space Center today, Marty. Uh, and Bob Mayran. Thank you for joining us, Bob. Dean Babcock and Doug Forrest has joined us, as well as Steve Jokums, all of you fabulous supporters of our museum. None more so than my new friend Steve Jokums up there in Illinois. And so we appreciate everybody chiming in today. We're going to talk about the Day of Remembrance, about my experience out at the Kennedy Space Center this morning. We want to remind, this is such a, and then we're going to have tomorrow. Let me go back here, Marty. Let me take that off a minute. I wanted to say that tomorrow we're going to have Mitch Rothman on from Manned Space Facebook page, and Mitch and I are just going to talk about what this means to you space geeks out there, as well as what it means to our country, to never forget the sacrifice made by the men and women who are pushing the envelope farther and farther each decade. So our event will be tomorrow, Sunday, out at Sandpoint Park. That's just north of our legendary Spaceview Park. We have students from Astronaut High School put an apple on the plaque of Krista McCullough, the teacher. A flower is donated by the Flower Club here in town, put on each of the 17 plaques that are around the flagpole out there at Sandpoint Park. Real popular place for the kids in the summer, as they got one of those water parks going on, and a gazebo, and all kinds of stuff going on there. So Dave Stange, good to see you on this day of remembering our fallen heroes, he says. And good evening from Ireland. Thank you. Colin Buckley's watching us, Marty. And good afternoon, Tom Celentano up there. And you guys up north, whew, yeah, it was a little bit cold today. This is part of my garb today, was my sweater from NASA that haven't seen too many people rocking this around town. You got a lot of compliments on it out there. Yeah, I wanted it over my head today to cover up my bald spot. Boy, it was just still in the 40s, Marty. And then I saw Bill Whiting, and I was surprised he wasn't in a t-shirt because he's from Canada. Thank you, Bill, for all you do for us. And Carlton Bailey's on there. He said we rebooted and all is well. And Cliff Watson, good morning to you, sir. Friday morning in Australia, as we're spending Thursday afternoon entertaining you with some of the cool things that have happened around the country. I kind of looked up to try to see if there's any pictures posted from Houston yet. With all the snow, freak snowstorm in Houston, it certainly, they pushed some of their events back, as we did here at Kennedy Space Center, made it an indoor event instead of an outdoor event. And there's a beautiful remembrance poster put together by the Cosmosphere. It has to be on your bucket list if you've never been to the Cosmosphere. I have twice. They're in Hutchinson, Kansas, and it's about 2 hours north of Oklahoma City, And if you're that close, you need to go down to Oklahoma City and see their wonderful science museum and then Tom Stafford's museum. But they all celebrate museums everywhere. Ad astra per aspera. Through difficulties to the stars is what that means. To the stars, a lot of people know, but through difficulties is aspera. And every one of these tragedies had a human element behind it of a mistake and why it happened. But we corrected those mistakes as a team and pushed on and created a better world for our civilians and citizens here on Earth, all you earthlings out there. So I know you can find out the bios and so forth of all these heroes. I'm not going to do that today. Tomorrow, Mitch and I will look at some of the individual astronauts, how they're honored at Kennedy Space Center. We'll look at that very briefly there. So the tradition is after ceremonies in front of the space mirror, they crowd after dignitaries go first, put roses and then carnations on the fence around there, and we'll see some of that here in just a few minutes. So, but out there today was astronaut Anna Fisher, the fourth woman in space, part of the original six, and Anna was. First I'm going to do a happy birthday. Okay, what happened to Anna's pictures? Something might not work the way I thought it would. There's Bob Cabana with Karen Conklin. And Anna's pictures are supposed to be right after that, aren't they? Yeah. They might not have translated. So I might not have many pictures on here if they don't translate up there. Well, we'll wing it, Marty. When I put pictures up, if they're not JPEGs, then PNG works, but Bob Cabana's birthday today. And as I was out to Space Center, I talked to him at length about a couple things. He gave me his phone number to text him about events going on here. And little did I know it was his birthday till I got back here to the museum and did our Facebook posts. And he's 76 years old today. Born January 23rd, 1949 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. A veteran of 4 space shuttle missions and 38 days in space. Let's see if he's going to show here in the next picture. There he is with Karen Conklin. We miss you and love you every day, Karen, and her legacy lives on here. She died of cancer in August, and just a wonderful person. And Bob Cabana has been in here many times, and we talked about Karen very briefly today. And there is Bob with Scott Vongen. Scott was a backup payload astronaut training with Sam Durrance and J.D. Bartow and Mike Lounge. If they had gotten sick, he would have been the astronaut to go up on Astro 1 and 2. And there they are at our Shuttle Fest last year, the Shuttle Fest 3, where Bob was a speaker on our panel there. So he was a pilot on one of the Astro missions, I believe, and there. So I'm going to be anxious if this one will probably show. I'm nervous that some of the pictures I loaded up at the event won't show. So there's that. Beautiful. If you've never been to Kennedy Space Center, you will. And when you go to the Atlantis building, you go through the Hall of Remembrance. They have another word for that. I keep messing that up. But on one side, you'll see it tomorrow with Mitch and I, are the Challenger astronaut mementos, and the other side, the Columbia. And when you turn to the right, you see that piece of Challenger on the left, and the windscreen of Columbia on the right. And we put the logos in there, and it is breathtaking. It is so surreal in a way and reverent. And you go up to that windshield frame, and there are still pine needles from Texas swamp inside of it there. Here's the Day of Remembrance brochure. That one's up. Wow, Marty, we just lost all those pictures.
Can we try and load them in now?
And no, I think it's in a format that's not going to show up here. We haven't had that happen in a while. Well, I'll just have to talk about it ad lib here and see if I can correct some of those pictures to show tomorrow. But they are in a format that they show up on Marty and I's screens here, not on our screens here, but you went through them all right.
I didn't get a chance to.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we didn't go through our script here to see that we've got a problem with about a dozen pictures here. But what this was they moved it inside to the um, uh, facility that is education facility for the Astronaut Memorial Foundation does this. And the Memorial Foundation uh, is just that, founded by the survivors of the Challenger in Columbia and Apollo 1. The families, the wives, some of the children helped form this. And the most recent president is Eileen Collins, and she was there to talk. We had Eileen Collins was there. We had Jan Davis, who I didn't get to see, Winston Scott. Of course, Bob Cabana was there, and Anna Fisher was there. So a good turnout of astronauts on a cold day here. And then we had they had some beautiful words, and then they showed Kelvin Manning, Kelvin. Kelvin Manning is the acting director of Kennedy Space Center, as Janet Petro was promoted to acting NASA administrator under the new Obama administration. So Janet must have gone to Washington, D.C., and maybe politics will be put aside, and she's got a shot at helping the nominee, Jared Isaacman. So that would be beautiful, because we don't want to lose Janet, who spent 12 years with Bob Cabana as his assistant and helped shape the way Kennedy Space Center is today. So I apologize for the pictures not loading up, but c'est la vie. That's kind of how the last few days have gone, and we're just going to roll with it. There is a picture I took off the internet of the Reverend talking to the group there, so you get an idea. In fact, that's Eileen Collins in the front row there, closest, and all the astronauts are sitting there. And if you've been to this facility, it's a huge area, and they just shut off part of it for this event. I did want to mention, Marty, that they had a beautiful, let's go back to the program there. Also giving some real poignant and emotional words was the son of Elon, Ramon. I learned that's how they do call it, Ramon. His son, Tal, 32 years old, was 12 years old when his dad died. So he's 34 years old. And he really, Marty, had a great message. His mother had died of cancer 6 years ago. Of course, the tragedies 22 years ago. He had a brother, older brother, who was an ace, just like his dad, flyer, be leading his class, number one in his class, and so forth, and got killed in a plane jet crash at age 21. Tal Ramon really has some hardships himself, but he really took the message to everybody's heart about continuing the exploration of space and having the opportunity that he does. He also has written music, and I saw him at the 50th anniversary, a couple years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. He was here, and he's a musician, piano player, and he sang a beautiful song that was actually taken up to space in honor of his dad. So talking about Tal Ramon. So that was very interesting there. And I wanted to say that indoors, how do you do this indoors? And they did it very special, where outside in this memorial, they read the names of each astronaut and pause in between it. Where here they had a picture up there, and they had a Marine, Marty, with a bell. There was a bell on the table, a big brass bell, and he would hit the bell, okay, and it would resonate for at least 30 to 40 seconds, maybe a full minute, before they said the next name. very, very appropriate. And our friend Thad Altman, the president and CEO of the Astronaut Memorial Foundation, he read off the people's names there, and then there was just a nice silence there. And this has Sonny Carter on there, who died in a plane crash, a commercial plane crash, and several others on there that gave their lives. Robert Freeman, of course, others that didn't fly, like Elliot C. and his Gemini mate, Charlie Bassett, and a few others that off the top of my head are, I can't remember, on the wall here. And it's backlit by the sun, and that's really a cool thing to go out there and see that iconic thing there. Thank you, Cliff, for your donation there. Yeah, thank you very much for your generous donation. He says $200, so thank you, from Australia. And hello, Mitch is going to be on here. Mitch is Man Space. And you got that right, Steve Jokins. Forever remembered. That is exactly what they call the display out there. And that's what Mitch and I will be talking about, is why do we forever remember these pioneers of space age? Of course, that's why, but we hope it never, ever ends. And out there, they put flowers on the wall out there. And see what, so very, very beautiful ceremony. Of course, it was cold out there, had pictures of everybody in coats, a lot of media presence out there. And I guess my pictures aren't showing up because I'm not much of a photographer anymore, since I kind of retired my Nikon gear and just towed around my cell phone. That's what it was. I took pictures on the cell phone, Marty, but I downloaded them instead of emailing them to me. So we'll figure that out later. Dean Babcock says that he attended Bradley University the same time as Robert Lawrence, and that was our African-American astronaut that died. That's cool, Dean. Bradley University, I assume, is in the great state of Illinois up there. And there's the beautiful backdrop that Marty used to show what we're talking about there. And yeah, none of that come out, Marty. That's very interesting. The pictures there. Well, I went out and saw Kathy Thornton. It was the astronaut of the day with Nick Thomas. Nick's going to be doing the astronaut bios for the Apollo astronauts at our event Sunday. And then doing the Challenger is going to be John Zarella, a CNN legend, a newscaster, actually reporter, broadcaster, and Bert Dicht of the National Space Society is going to be doing the Columbia astronauts. So if you're locally, please come out and see it there. It is quite an event there. And out there at Pad 34, where Marty and I are going to go Monday, we're invited to the special early evening ceremony out at Pad 34, where Gus Grissom, Roger Chaffee, and Ed White lost their lives. This is a plaque that private people bought and put out there shortly after the tragedy, saying it was in memory of those who made the ultimate sacrifice so others could reach the stars. Ad astra per aspera, a rough road leads to the stars. Another interpretation of that. Godspeed to the crew of Apollo 1. And that is a ceremony that I really gets to you out there too. Sometimes Gus Grissom's brother, Lowell Grissom, will be there. Lowell may show up Friday here at the museum. And he usually does come to our service here. But I think Lowell's 88 years old now, and a great guy. So here are the heroes. I'm not going to name them off there. We'll do that tomorrow. But I like this collage on NASA's Day of Remembrance, where at all the installations around America, they had an event today. Of course, that would include Houston, Marshall Space Center, of course, Johnson Space Center in Houston, Marshall Space Center. You've got the John Glenn Center up in Ohio, up on Lake Erie. You've got, would they do it at Goddard, Marty? What's over here on the East Coast also NASA facility where they would maybe, but I'm sure at Goddard and Wallops Island in Washington D.C. they lay a wreath uh, near the uh, the out there at the Arlington National Cemetery. They lay a wreath there. Marty and I were there a couple years ago. My one and only visit there. That's an amazing facility with all of the military people there. So some of the astronauts are buried, most of them at Arlington Cemetery. Some are buried in their hometowns, like Krista McCullough. Kalpana Chawla, her ashes were spread over a national forest out west. Okay, and I know that El Onizuka, his remains went back to his homeland of Hawaii. And so we'll talk more about that tomorrow. But out there seeing Bob Cabana and just what a great guy he is. And, you know, he was commander of Columbia one time. So about 4 years ago was the wake for Don Peterson out there underneath Atlantis. And they simply put a picture of the astronaut up there and have a wreath, and the director comes out, and it was Bob at the time, and just says a few poignant words about the person that passed away. And so he's milling around kind of just before the event, and I say hi to him, and he says, "Hi, Mark." And I have my real camera with me, I see him walk down the forever remembered hallway and go into the room. And as I walk into the room, I couldn't resist taking a picture. And in my opinion, and I worked for the Associated Press for about 15 years and had some really neat pictures published, but this is one of my most favorite pictures I've ever taken. And that's Bob Cabana looking at the side of Challenger. And when he stood there for the longest time. And I know he heard my shutter click because my Nikon's kind of a noisy camera. And he turned around and walked up to me, and I said, "I hope you don't mind taking a picture." And he said, "No, Mark, not at all." And I said, "Sir, that was really an image." I said, "What were you thinking about?" And he said to me, he just looked me in the eyes. He says, "Mark, these are my friends, and I miss them." And really, it gets to me thinking about that. It was really, I mean, I got verklempt in front of him. I was like, "Oh my gosh, what a thing to say. These are my friends, and I miss them." And here he is on his 76th birthday. He was obviously 54 when they passed away. And I think he probably flew. He did fly STS. No, 88 was his last flight. So he didn't fly after this tragedy. But so there's my personal story of one picture that I'm very proud of, and made so much so because of this great leader for NASA. Bob Cabana spent 12 years 12 years and 7 months being the leader of Kennedy Space Center. And he was, that's about 3 months longer than Kurt Debus did, the first director there. So thank you all for joining us today. And thank you all for putting up with our hiccups. Mitch Rothman, going to have him beside me tomorrow. You'll get to know Mitch, but he's been on a couple times already, and a great partner of our museum and now sponsor of our Shuttle Fest. And we're going to talk about what this means to him and the community, like all of you out there. Maybe you can voice your comments and words tomorrow to Marty here, and we'll relay them to you about how you approach NASA's darkest week, where ironically the fire of Apollo 1 was January 27th, 1967. The explosion of Challenger on its launch was January 28, 1986, and the reentry disaster of Columbia was February 1st, 2003. So keep those families is what it's all about. That's what these celebrations are about, the families embracing how we consider heroes, but they were mom and dad and uncle and aunt and brother and sister to hundreds of other people that their lives affected. So thank you all for watching today. Until tomorrow, I'm Mark Marquette saying thank you for being with us. Prayers to these families, and I hope to see you soon in our museum to bridge the space between us.